Hey everyone and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video I'm going to be doing my Q2 read and wrap up. So yeah, basically in this video I'm going to be going through some of my favourite books from the second quarter of 2022, as well as some of my least favourite books and some books that I just felt kind of meh about. Some of these books I did talk about quite recently in my mid-year book tag, so I'll leave that linked in the description and in the cards just in case you haven't seen that, but I'll also leave timestamps in the description just in case you wanted to skip any books, just in case you're fed up of hearing me talk about them. I wouldn't want anyone to get bored. But I'll also leave links to any reading vlogs in the description where I read any of these books, just in case you wanted to see my reactions and my thoughts as I was reading them. Otherwise though, I did want to quickly mention a series that I finally finished back in April, and that was The Greenbone Saga by Fonda. So I think when I filmed my Q1 wrap-up, I was still reading Jade, but I did then go on to finish, not Jade C, Jade Legacy, also in April, and I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. I actually think I gave all of the books in the Greenbone Saga 5 stars. I also, a few months ago, read the prequel novella, The Jade Setter of Janloon, which I still really enjoyed. I think I gave it 4 stars, and I really liked actually how it follows civilians in the world of the Greenbone Saga. So it follows this guy who works in a shop that makes jade jewellery, and there's this mystery that needs to be solved. I don't want to say too much because I think it's only around 120 pages, but I listened to the audiobook and I did really like the narration. I think if I was to ever reread this series, then I'd probably listen to the audiobooks because I think it's the same narrator who does the prequel novella, who does the main series, and I really liked their narration. One of my favourite thrillers that I've read so far this year was 3 Hours by Rosamund Lupton. So this is a psychological thriller that follows all of these different perspectives of people who are trapped in this hostage situation at this school. There was so much tension in this book and it was so atmospheric and suspenseful, and it really takes you inside the minds of these characters. It's not like a very action-packed thriller, but I loved it. I don't often give thrillers 5 stars, but this was an easy 5 stars. I don't think I've ever read a thriller before that has almost made me cry, but this made me feel very emotional in places. Next I want to talk about Runtime by Catherine Ryan Howard. So this is another thriller that I also gave 5 stars, and I think what I liked about this book was how unique it felt, because it felt like a movie within a book, possibly because parts of this book are written as a screenplay. So you have chunks that are basically a movie script, but then you also have parts and chapters that are following this main character who used to be an actress, but she's kind of given up on acting because of something that happened in her past. However, she's then offered the lead role in this movie that's filming out in the Irish countryside, and she accepts the job, but once she arrives, some weird stuff starts happening, and there's some very strange similarities between the movie and what's happening in real life. You know how sometimes you'll read a thriller and it will actually scare you? That's what this book was for me. It was kind of like a horror movie. I think it's over 500 pages, so it's quite a chunky book, but I read it so quickly because I literally couldn't put it down. I have read 2 other books by this author and I gave them both 4 stars, but like I said, this was 5 stars. It's going to be one of my favourite thrillers of the year. I actually read an arc of it through NetGalley, so I don't know if it's out yet, but I would definitely recommend it if you're looking for a really, really spooky thriller. Another thriller that I also read an arc of a few months ago was The It Girl by Ruth Ware. So this is definitely out now. I'm pretty sure that it's out in both the UK and the US, but But this is a dark academia mystery thriller that follows a woman called Hannah, who, when she was in college, her best friend and roommate April was murdered, and in the present day, Hannah has just learned that the guy who was convicted of April's murder has just died in prison. So Hannah is thinking that she can finally put the past behind her until a journalist approaches her and claims that new evidence has come to light that suggests that this guy was actually innocent. So it's all about this main character confronting her past because it was her testimony that actually put this guy behind bars. I think what I liked most about this book was definitely the atmosphere, but I also liked the setting. So there's two timelines, one in the past and one in the present day, and the timeline in the present day takes place in April. No, not in April, that's the name of the girl who died. The timeline in the present day takes place in Edinburgh, and then the timeline in the past takes place in Oxford, and I just really enjoyed the vibes of this. Ruth Ware is just so good at writing atmosphere. I also thought that the mystery was quite clever. There were a few twists that I didn't see coming. I think there were a few moments that dragged a little bit, which is why I gave this 4 stars rather than 5 stars, but it is a thriller that I keep thinking about and that I did find quite memorable. I think I said at the time that this is my second favourite Ruth Ware book, and I still stand by that. I still think that The Turn of the Key is my favourite, but this was a very close second. Next I'm going to talk about one of my favourite romances of the year, and that is 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. So this is a second chance romance, which had me a little bit nervous at first because I don't tend to like second chance romances, because usually I agree with why the couple didn't work out in the first place. However, this one felt very, very different, and my cousin recommended this to me because she really enjoyed it, and I do tend to trust her judgment, so I thought I'd give it a go, and I ended up loving it. It basically follows 2 writers who meet at this literary conference in New York, and they pretend that they don't know each other. However, they actually met back when they were teenagers, and they had this whirlwind romance that only lasted a week, but neither of them have been able to forget about the other person, and they've actually been secretly writing to each other through their books. So straight away I was intrigued because I do tend to like books that are about books or that are about writers, and I'm so glad I gave this one a go because the chemistry between the 2 main characters was incredible, and I loved how it was very well balanced because there were plenty of steamy moments, but also it was quite emotional in places. The main character has chronic pain. I think it's migraines that she has, and I found that really interesting because I'd never read that type of representation before. Like I said, it's one of the few second chance romances that I have really enjoyed, and I think it's because I understood the reasons why it didn't work out with the main characters back when they were teenagers, and so I did find myself rooting for them. And yeah, I'm surprised that more people aren't talking about this book because it was really good. Okay, so next I wanted to talk about some popular books that I didn't really have strong feelings about. I didn't hate them, but also I felt kind of indifferent towards them, but because they're quite popular, I did want to quickly summarise my thoughts on them. So first up, I wanted to mention Vicious by V. Schwab. This was really fast-paced and I enjoyed my time reading it, but I thought that the concept was more interesting than the actual story. I think it's a case of I'd read so many reviews of this book and I'd heard so many people talking about it that by the time I actually came to read it, I felt like I already knew the story. It's not that the book is predictable, it's just that there was nothing that was really surprising me because I felt like I knew too much about it going in. I don't actually know anything about the sequel though, so I am hoping that that will mean I'll enjoy it a lot more. I also picked up Book Lovers by Emily Henry, which I was really excited about because I really liked Beach Read by Emily Henry, and I also enjoyed People We Meet on Vacation. However, I found Book Lovers just a little bit underwhelming. I really liked the small town vibes and I liked the 2 main characters, but this focused a lot on the sister relationship between the main character Nora and and her sister. And usually I would like that because I like sister relationships in books, but the sister was really annoying. So yeah, I ended up thinking this was just okay, and I still much preferred Beach Read by Emily Henry. Another book that I was just a little underwhelmed by was The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. So I think this is another case of my expectations not matching the book, because nothing about this story surprised me, and it's not the book's fault because I don't think it's meant to be that type of story. I think it is meant to be more about the characters and about the vibes, so I could see why other people have really loved this book because it is very cute and it's very wholesome, but I thought that the messages that it was trying to get across were just a little too on the nose, and I think I would have personally preferred it if it had been more subtle. Okay, I'm starting to get really warm, but we're nearly done. So next I'm going to move on to my disappointments of the quarter, starting with The Good Girl's Guide to Murder series by Holly Jackson, which I'm still really upset about because, first of all, I loved the first two books in this series. I probably should have started by saying that actually, but I gave the first book 4.5 stars, and then I gave the second book 5 stars. I really enjoyed it, and I thought that it was a very clever mystery, and I really liked the ending, and I felt like I was hyped going into the third book. I was expecting it to be just as good as the first two books, but I hated it. I didn't like the direction that it went in, and I felt like the characters were acting really out of character. So yeah, this ended up being 2 stars, which, like I said, I was really disappointed with because I loved the first 2 books and I was expecting that book 3 was going to be just as good. I can actually remember when this book came out, it had very mixed reviews. People were either loving it and giving it 5 stars, or people were hating it, and unfortunately I was one of those people who hated it. Another book that I was really disappointed with was The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager, and I should have known that this probably wasn't going to be my kind of thing because I knew from the synopsis that this was going to be more of a domestic thriller, and that was my main issue in the beginning, is that it felt like a very generic domestic thriller. It was following this woman whose husband passed away, and she now has new neighbours who are living across the lake. She's from New York, but she's currently living in her family's lake house. And yeah, she builds this friendship with the woman who lives in the house across the lake, but then this woman ends up going missing, and the main character Casey becomes obsessed with finding out what happened to her. The ending to this, without spoilers, was an experience. It was one of those situations where I was reading it thinking, what am I reading? Is this actually what's happening? It felt quite convenient and it felt like it came out of nowhere, but I know a few people have enjoyed the ending to this book. I think that it was a very risky thing that Riley Sager did, and in my opinion it kind of didn't pay off. But I know that, yes, some people did enjoy it, so just take my opinion with a pinch of salt. This next book is a difficult one because I don't feel like I had very high expectations going into it, but all of the reviews that I'd seen beforehand had been positive, so I was expecting to like it a lot more than I did. But that is Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. So this is about 2 guys who I think are in their 50s, and they both spent time in prison when they were younger, and they both have sons. So their 2 sons were actually married. However, at the start of the book, these men learn that their sons have been killed, and it's a revenge story where they're trying to find out what happened and track down the people who were responsible. This felt like a Quentin Tarantino movie, and I think that's the main reason why I didn't love it, because it was very action-packed and it was quite violent, and I found it quite jarring in places. So I think this is a case of, it's not that it was badly written, it just wasn't for me personally. The final book on my my list is Circe by Madeline Miller, and I am still so sad that I didn't enjoy this book because I really liked The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, and so I was expecting to like Circe too because I really liked Madeline Miller's writing style. But the writing style in Circe felt very different to The Song of Achilles. It's the kind of book that doesn't really have much plot. It basically follows Circe, who was the daughter of the god Helios. I don't know if I mentioned actually that this is a Greek myth retelling. A big part of this book is basically very long descriptions of settings, and that's fine. Like, the writing was beautiful, but I was kind of bored. So I ended up giving this one 2 stars, and I was so disappointed because I did genuinely think that I was gonna love this. To be fair, I didn't hate it. There were some parts that I found were quite interesting and where I found myself feeling more engaged, and where I did actually end up Googling to see the comparisons with the original myth. So that's a positive, I guess, but otherwise I didn't like this one. My throat is starting to feel very, very croaky, but thankfully that does bring me to the end of this video. So thanks for watching. If you made it this far, let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and click subscribe if you would like to see more videos from me, and I will see you next time. Bye.